I came back from my business trip, and when I entered the house, I saw my whole family waiting for me. My son said, "Mom, your time is over. Dad is happier with her." I walked away in silence and turned their lives into a living hell. Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here with me today. Before I begin my story, grab a warm cup of tea and get comfortable. I'd love to know what time of day you're watching this video. Please comment M for morning, A for afternoon, or E for evening. Now, let me take you into this story. I walked in and saw my family on the couch. My husband, my mother, my son, and my own sister. The wind coming off the Long Island Sound was sharp that night, the kind of cold that slips through your wool coat and settles deep in your bones, but it was nothing compared to the chill that hit me the second I stepped into my own foyer. "What's wrong?" I asked, dropping my keys into the bowl on the entryway table. The silence that greeted me wasn't peaceful. It was thick. It felt charged, like the air before a thunderstorm. I had just landed at JFK after 3 exhausting days in Chicago, saving a merger deal that my husband Greg had nearly torpedoed with his arrogance. I was exhausted. My eyes burned from lack of sleep, and my shoulders ached from the weight of my laptop bag. All I wanted was a hot shower, a glass of Cabernet, and the comfort of my home in Connecticut. I wanted to tell Greg that I had fixed his mess, that the sterling realty empire we had built over 25 years was safe for another quarter. But as I walked into the living room, I realized this wasn't a welcome home party. It was a tribunal. They were all there, arranged on the designer leather sectional I had chosen myself last Christmas. Greg sat in the center, impeccably dressed in a crisp white shirt, but he wouldn't meet my eyes. To his left was my mother, Lorraine, her posture rigid, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. To his right, Brenda, my younger sister, and in the armchair next to them, my son, Tyler. The atmosphere was suffocating. No one was crying. No one looked sad. They looked resolute. "What's going on?" I asked again, my breath catching in my throat. "Is everyone okay?" "Mom?" I took a step forward, instinctively reaching out, but Tyler stood up. My 22-year-old son, the boy whose college tuition I paid for, whose mistakes I had covered up 1,000 times, didn't come to hug me. He planted himself like a security guard blocking a door. He looked at me with eyes devoid of the warmth I had nurtured for 2 decades. "Mom, sit down," Tyler said. His voice was cold, deeper than I remembered, stripped of all affection. "You need to listen, and you need to not make a scene." "A scene?" "Tyler, you're scaring me." "What is this?" "You need to accept a new reality," he continued, reciting words that sounded rehearsed, like a script someone else had written for him. "You're not in charge of this family anymore." I looked past him to Greg. "Greg, why aren't you saying anything?" Greg finally looked up. His handsome face, the face that had been the public image of our company for years, was twisted into a mask of pity mixed with annoyance. "It's over, Valerie. The charade is over." "What charade?" I felt like I was drowning on dry land. "Aunt Brenda," Tyler said, gesturing to my sister. "She makes Dad happier now. Unlike you, she gets him." The world stopped spinning. I looked at Brenda, my little sister, whose rent I had paid for 6 years, whom I had hired when no one else would give her a job because of her utter lack of qualifications. She sat there, legs crossed, wearing a silk blouse that looked suspiciously like one missing from my closet. And then I saw it. Greg's hand was resting casually, possessively on Brenda's knee. But that wasn't the worst part. On her finger, glinting under the recessed lighting, was a diamond ring. Not a new ring. My ring. It was the vintage Art Deco diamond Greg had given me for our 20th anniversary. The one that had mysteriously vanished from my jewelry box 6 months ago. I had torn the house apart looking for it, crying for days, while Greg told me I was careless and had probably lost it at the gym. "That's my ring," I said, my voice trembling with a rage so pure it felt hot in my throat. "It looks better on her," Greg said with a shrug. "It was a waste on you. You never wear jewelry anyway. You're too busy working." "We want you to move out," Tyler said, breaking the silence again. "Dad's keeping the house." "I'm staying here." Aunt Brenda is moving into the master suite. It's better if you go. You create too much tension. My son. My boy. You're choosing this? I asked Tyler, tears finally stinging my eyes. You're choosing the woman who is sleeping with your father behind my back? She's your aunt, Tyler. She's not just my aunt anymore, Tyler snapped. She's the only one who really listens to me. You just throw money at me and tell me to study. Dad and Brenda, they treat me like a man. I looked at the four of them. My husband, my sister, my mother, my son. The four pillars of my life. And every single one of them was rotten. They weren't just breaking my heart. They were dismantling my existence with a cruelty that left me breathless. A wave of nausea hit me, but I swallowed it down. I would not give them the satisfaction of seeing me crumble. I would not scream. I would not beg. Tyler took a step closer, his face hard. Mom, sit down. Your time is over. Dad is happier with her. Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here with me today. Before I continue with what happened next in that living room, I'd love to know what city you're watching from. Please feel free to share it in the comments. Now, let me immerse you back into this nightmare. Happier? I repeated, the word tasting like ash. You think happiness is built on theft? Don't make this difficult, Valerie, Greg said, standing up now. Just go. I looked at my mother. Surely, the woman who gave birth to us both would stop this madness. Mom? Lorraine looked away, smoothing her skirt. It's for the best, Val. Brenda needs stability. The betrayal cut deeper than any knife. But as I looked at their smug faces, something inside me shifted. The shock began to recede, replaced by a cold, sharp clarity. They thought I was weak. They thought I was just the wife, the mother, the checkbook. They forgot who built the roof over their heads. I straightened my spine. I didn't sit down. I turned around, picked up my bag, and looked at them one last time. Enjoy the happiness, I whispered. While you can. I didn't storm out. I didn't throw a vase. I simply turned my back on the people who had constituted my entire world for the last 25 years. But as I reached for the door handle, my mother's voice stopped me. Valerie, wait. I paused, a foolish flicker of hope igniting in my chest. Maybe she had come to her senses. Maybe she realized that her son-in-law was sleeping with her younger daughter and that this was morally repugnant. I turned slowly. Lorraine stood up, but she didn't come to hug me. She walked over to the entryway table where I had dropped my keys. She picked them up, the keys to the house I had bought, the house I paid the mortgage on every month, and handed them to Greg. You won't be needing these, Lorraine said, her voice devoid of any maternal warmth. We don't want you sneaking back in to cause drama. Greg is changing the locks tomorrow anyway. I stared at her. Mom? You're kicking me out? This is my house. My name is on the deed. It's a marital asset, Greg corrected smoothly, pocketing the keys. And considering the state of your mental health lately, I think the courts will agree that I should maintain possession of the family home for the stability of our son. My mental health? I laughed, a harsh, dry sound. I just closed a $50 million merger in Chicago while you were playing house with my sister. See? Brenda chimed in from the couch, her voice high and sugary, the voice she used when she wanted something. She's so aggressive. Mark needs peace, Valerie. He needs a wife who is present, not a business partner who sleeps with her laptop. You're just too intense. Eleanor, you have to be realistic, my mother added, slipping into her familiar lecture mode. You've been married to your job for years. Mark is a man with needs. Brenda understands that. She's softer than you. She's always been the sensitive one. She needs to be cherished. Well, you're the strong one, Valerie. You can take care of yourself. The strong one, I repeated. It was the label she had slapped on me since I was 7 years old, the excuse she used to neglect me while she coddled Brenda. So because I'm capable, I deserve to be homeless? And because Brenda is a parasite, she deserves my husband and my house. Don't call your sister names. Lorraine snapped, her face flushing. We are supporting happiness here. Greg and Brenda share a connection. They love each other. It's not something they planned. It just happened. You can't punish them for falling in love. Love. I looked at Brenda. She offered a small, triumphant smile, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear to flash my diamond ring again. You call sleeping with your sister's husband love? Just go, Mom, Tyler said, stepping between me and the living room again. Dad's keeping the house. I'm staying here. It's better if you go. You create too much tension. I looked at my son. I remembered teaching him to tie his shoes in this hallway. I remembered waiting up for him when he missed curfew, terrified he was hurt. I remembered covering for him when his grades slipped so his father wouldn't yell. Tyler, I said softly. Do you know what they're doing? Do you know he is manipulating you? Dad promised me the VP position next year if I stick with him, Tyler said, his chin lifting defiantly. I don't need your college degree. I'm going to be an executive. Dad respects me. You just treat me like a kid. The realization hit me like a physical blow. Greg hadn't just stolen my marriage, he had bought my son. He had leveraged Tyler's laziness and desire for easy money against me. He had promised him a title he wasn't qualified for to turn him into a weapon. He's using you, Ty, I said, my voice shaking. Get out. Tyler yelled. Just get out. Greg walked over to the door, grabbed my suitcase, the one I hadn't even unpacked yet, and tossed it onto the front porch. It landed with a heavy thud. You heard the boy, Greg sneered. Get off my property, Valerie. Before I call the police and have you removed for trespassing. Your property? I whispered. I paid for every brick. Prove it in court, Greg said. Oh, wait. You won't be able to afford a lawyer. We'll get to that part soon. He shoved me, not hard enough to bruise, but hard enough to force me across the threshold. I stumbled out into the frigid night air. The heavy oak door slammed shut in my face. The sound echoed like a gunshot. I stood there on the porch of the home I had designed, shivering in my coat. I heard the lock click. Then I heard muffled laughter from inside. They were celebrating. They were opening champagne. They had successfully excised the tumor of me from their perfect new life. I walked down the driveway to my car, my legs feeling like lead. I fumbled for my car keys, grateful they hadn't taken those, though I suspected Greg just hadn't thought of it yet. I got into the driver's seat and locked the doors. I looked back at the house. The living room window was glowing with warmth. I could see their silhouettes. My mother was pouring drinks. Brenda was sitting on Greg's lap. Tyler was laughing. They looked like a happy family. A family that had simply replaced one member with a newer, younger model. I started the engine. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew I had to get away before I shattered completely. As I backed out of the driveway, tears finally blurred my vision. But beneath the tears, a seed of something else was taking root. It wasn't sadness. It was hate. Cold, hard, diamond-sharp hate. You think I'm the strong one, Mom? I whispered to the empty car. You have no idea. I drove for an hour, the lights of the highway blurring into red and gold streaks across my windshield. My mind was a chaotic storm of images, Brenda's smirk, the ring on her finger, Tyler's cold stare, my mother's betrayal. But beneath the shock, a primal instinct was kicking in. Survival. I needed gas. The low fuel light had been on since I left the airport, but I'd been too eager to get home to stop. Now, on a desolate stretch of I-95, I pulled into a 24-hour gas station. The wind was howling, rattling the metal roof of the pump island. My hands were shaking as I stepped out into the biting cold. I swiped my credit card, the Platinum Amex linked to our joint account, the one I used for everything from groceries to business dinners. Processing. The screen flashed red. Declined. Please see cashier. I frowned. That was impossible. The credit limit on that card was $50,000, and I'd paid the bill in full 3 days ago. I tried again. Declined. A cold knot formed in my stomach, heavier than the betrayal I'd just witnessed. I dug through my wallet and pulled out my personal debit card, the one linked to my checking account where my salary was deposited. I went inside the station. The clerk, a bored teenager with headphones around his neck, didn't even look up as I put a bottle of water and a pack of gum on the counter. I swiped the debit card. It's not going through, he mumbled, popping a bubble with his gum. Try it again, I said, my voice tight. There's money in there. He sighed and ran it again. Declined, ma'am. Insufficient funds or card blocked. You got cash. I stood there, frozen under the harsh fluorescent lights. I pulled out my phone. I had to check my banking app. My clumsy fingers fumbled as I logged in. Access denied. User authentication failed. Please contact your branch. I tried the business account. Access denied. I tried the joint savings account. Access denied. I felt the blood drain from my face. Greg hadn't just kicked me out of my home. He had executed a financial kill switch. He had been planning this. You don't lock a co-owner out of business and personal accounts instantly unless you've laid the groundwork with the bank, falsely claiming fraud or changing administrative privileges days in advance. He wanted me destitute. He wanted me stranded in the middle of the night with no resources so that I would crawl back and sign whatever divorce settlement he threw at me. Ma'am? You buying this or what? The clerk asked. I rummaged through my purse, past the useless plastic, to the small zipper pocket at the bottom. I found 3 crumpled $20 bills and a handful of change. $60-some. That was my net worth at this moment. Here, I said, handing him a 20. Just the gas. I got back in my car, shivering not just from the cold, but from the terrifying awareness of my vulnerability. I couldn't go to a hotel. I had no credit card for a deposit. I couldn't go to my mother's. I couldn't go to Brenda's. I drove until I found a roadside motel with a flickering neon sign that read vacancy. It was the kind of place where truckers sleep for a few hours. The kind of place where the sheets smell like stale smoke and regret. Pay in advance, the night manager said through bulletproof glass. $50 for the night. Cash only. I handed him $50 of my remaining $60. He slid a key through the tray. Room 12. The room was freezing. The heater rattled and spit out air that smelled like burning dust. I sat on the edge of the sagging mattress, still in my expensive business suit, my coat pulled tightly around me. I looked at my phone. The screen was lit up with notifications. No apologies. No, please come back. Just emails. Subject: Notice of termination. Sterling Realty. I opened it, my hands trembling. It was a PDF attached to an email from the head of HR, a woman I had hired, a woman I had mentored. Dear Mrs. Sterling, effective immediately, your position as Chief Operating Officer is terminated for cause. Allegations of corporate espionage and gross negligence regarding the Chicago merger have been brought to our attention. I laughed, a harsh, raw sound in the empty room. Espionage? Negligence? I was the one who stayed until 3 a.m. auditing the books. I was the one who knew every zoning law in New York City. Greg didn't even know how to convert a PDF without asking for my help. He was trying to destroy my reputation. He wanted to make sure I couldn't get a job anywhere else. Then a text message came through. It was from Tyler. My thumb hovered over the screen. Some small, foolish part of me hoped he'd snapped out of it, that he was sorry. Mom, don't make this harder. Dad says he'll cut off my tuition and trust fund if you fight the divorce. He's promised me the VP position next year if I stick with him. You always told me to be ambitious. I'm just doing what you taught me. Please understand. I dropped the phone on the bed as if it were burning. That was the final eraser. Greg hadn't just taken my money and my job. He had bought my son's soul. He had used the wealth I helped build to bribe my own child against me. I curled up on the filthy bedspread, my knees pulled to my chest. I didn't cry. I was past crying. I stared at the water stain on the ceiling, listening to the roar of the trucks on the highway. They thought they had won. They thought by taking away the credit cards and the passwords, they had taken away my power. They forgot one thing. They forgot who built the castle they were sitting in. They forgot who designed the security systems, who drafted the contracts, and who knew where all the bodies were buried. Greg thought Sterling Realty ran on his charm. He was about to learn that it ran on my brain. Sleep was impossible in that motel room. The roar of the highway traffic was a constant hum, but it was the noise in my head that kept me awake. The sharp, jagged memories replaying on a loop. To understand why I was lying on a dirty mattress with $10 to my name, I had to go back. I had to look at the foundations of my life and realize they had been cracked from the very beginning. I grew up in a small town in Pennsylvania, the older of two daughters. My father died when I was 7, leaving my mother, Lorraine, to raise us alone. His death broke something in her. Or maybe it just revealed who she really was. She was a woman who needed to be adored, to be the center of attention. And she projected that need onto her daughters, or rather, onto one of them. Brenda was born beautiful. Even as a baby, she had golden curls and big blue eyes that made strangers stop on the street. I was plain. Brown hair, serious eyes, sturdy. I was the responsible one. Brenda was the princess. I remember the day I turned 18. I had just received my acceptance letter to the Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania on a partial scholarship. It was my ticket out. I'd worked 3 part-time jobs through high school, tutoring, waitressing, shelving books at the library, to save for the rest of the tuition. I ran into the kitchen waving the letter. Mom, I got in. Lorraine was at the table painting Brenda's nails. Brenda was 12 then, already demanding and petulant. That's nice, Valerie, my mother said without looking up. But keep your voice down. Brenda has a headache. But Mom, it's Wharton. It's the business program. Lorraine sighed, finally looking at me. Her eyes weren't filled with pride. They were calculating. Valerie, honey, we need to talk about that money you've saved. My stomach dropped. My college fund? Well, Brenda has been scouted. There's a modeling competition in Miami next month. It could be her big break. But the fees, the travel, the portfolio pictures, it's expensive. Mom, that's my tuition money. I earned it. You're so selfish, Valerie. Brenda piped in, blowing on her wet nails. You don't want me to be famous. When I'm rich, I'll buy you a car. Valerie, my mother said, her voice taking on that tone, the one that mixed guilt with a command. You're the strong one. You're the smart one. You can always find a way. You can work another year, take night classes. But Brenda, she's delicate. This is her dream. You wouldn't want to crush your sister's dream, would you? Family sacrifices for each other. I gave them the money. Of course I did. I had been conditioned for 18 years to believe that my value lay only in what I could provide for them. I was the scapegoat, the workhorse, the fixer. Brenda was the golden child, the star, the one who deserved to shine. Brenda went to Miami. She didn't get signed. She spent the money on clothes and theme parks. I spent the next year working double shifts at a diner to earn the money back. I started college a year late, exhausted but determined. That dynamic never changed. It just evolved. When I graduated top of my class, my mother didn't come to the ceremony because Brenda was having severe anxiety over a breakup with a 2-week boyfriend. I walked across the stage alone. When I got my first big promotion at a financial consulting firm, my mother said, "That's great, honey. Hey, can you lend Brenda $2,000? Her landlord is being a real jerk." I paid Brenda's rent. I paid for her car repairs. I paid for acting classes she never attended. I bought my mother a condo so she wouldn't have to worry about stairs. I thought I was buying their love. I thought if I just gave enough, worked hard enough, fixed enough problems, they would finally look at me the way they looked at Brenda. I thought one day my mother would look at my face and say, "I'm so proud of you, Valerie. You're my joy." But I was never her joy. I was her utility bill. I was her safety net. And then I met Greg. He was charming, ambitious, and he seemed to see me. He told me I was brilliant. He told me I was beautiful. I didn't realize then that he had the same calculating look in his eyes as my mother. He didn't see a soulmate. He saw a host. He saw a woman trained to give everything and ask for nothing in return. He fit perfectly into the empty space in my heart that my mother and sister had hollowed out. I married him thinking I was building a new family, a better one. Lying in the dim motel room, the revelation hit me with the force of a physical blow. I hadn't escaped my family dynamic by marrying Greg. I had recreated it. Greg was the golden child, demanding adoration and resources. I was still the scapegoat, toiling in the shadows to keep the lights on. And Brenda. Brenda was just the inevitable conclusion. The two parasites in my life had finally found each other. "You're the strong one, Valerie," my mother's voice echoed in my memory. Well, she was right about one thing. I was strong. Strong enough to carry them for 40 years. And now, God help them, I was strong enough to drop them. I sat up on the bed, the metal springs creaking. I wasn't going to cry anymore. The sadness was gone, replaced by a cold, clinical clarity. They wanted the delicate Brenda. They wanted the dreamer Greg. Fine. They could have each other. But they couldn't have my money. They couldn't have my company. I reached for my laptop bag. It was time to stop being the self-sacrificing daughter. It was time to be the CEO who liquidates toxic assets. The morning sun filtered through the grimy motel room curtains, casting long, dusty shadows on the floor. I opened my laptop. Thankfully, I had a portable Wi-Fi hotspot in my bag, a habit from years of business travel. Greg couldn't cut off a device he didn't know existed. I didn't try the bank accounts yet. I knew those doors were sealed shut. Instead, I navigated to the login screen for the Sterling Realty private server. Greg thought that by calling the bank and removing me as a signatory, he had cut me off. He thought by firing me through HR, he had revoked my access. He relied on the standard protocols. He relied on the front door. He forgot about the ghost access. When we set up the digital infrastructure 10 years ago, Greg was paranoid about employees stealing from him. He insisted on a localized, highly encrypted internal server for our most sensitive financial data. He wanted a master admin login that could bypass all other protocols in case we ever got locked out or held hostage by the IT staff. "Only you and I will know the ghost access," he'd said. But Greg never bothered to memorize the complex 64-character string I generated. He wrote it on a post-it, kept it in his desk drawer for a week, and then threw it away, assuming I would always be there to type it in for him. He was lazy. He hated details. He thought details were for support staff, which is how he secretly viewed me. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. I typed the character string. It wasn't random characters. It was a line from a Robert Frost poem mixed with the GPS coordinates of the first building we bought and the date Tyler lost his first tooth. Greg knew none of those things. Authentication in process. I held my breath. If he had hired an external cybersecurity firm to scrub the system, this wouldn't work. But Greg was cheap. He wouldn't pay for outside consultants if he thought he'd already won. Access granted. Welcome, architect. The screen flooded with data. The entire nervous system of Sterling Realty was open before me. Emails, wire transfers, transaction logs, tax documents, private chat histories. I wasn't just looking at a company. I was looking at the crime scene of my marriage. I started downloading. I didn't want a few files. I wanted everything. Every email Greg had sent for the last 5 years. Every expense report. Every wire transfer to the Cayman Islands or Switzerland. I worked with the precision of a surgeon. My fingers flew across the keys, organizing data into folders. I cross-referenced dates. I checked the metadata on documents. And that's when I saw it. A folder labeled Project B. My heart hammered against my ribs. B for Brenda. I opened the folder. It wasn't a construction project. It was a ledger of expenses. And as I scrolled, the blood ran cold in my veins. This wasn't just an affair. This was grand-scale embezzlement. January 12th, $5,000 wire to Miller Consulting, LLC. Brenda's maiden name. February 14th, $12,000 at Cartier. March 1st, $4,500 monthly rent for a luxury suite at the Plaza Hotel. He had been keeping Brenda like a courtesan on company money for 3 years. While I was telling the board we needed to cut costs on office supplies, Greg was funneling thousands of dollars a month to my sister. But it went deeper. I saw wires to a shell corporation I didn't recognize, Orion Investments, LLC. I clicked on the incorporation documents for Orion. The signatory wasn't Greg. It was Brenda. And the assets being transferred to Orion weren't just cash. They were deeds. Greg was slowly transferring the titles of our most valuable, debt-free properties to a company owned by my sister. He was gutting Sterling Realty. He was preparing to leave me with the empty shell, the debts, and the liabilities, while he and Brenda walked away with the assets. I felt sick. This wasn't just replacing me as a wife. This was a grand heist. They were stealing my life's work. But as I scrolled through the documents, a cold smile touched my lips. Greg was a showman, not an architect. He didn't understand the paperwork he was signing. In his arrogance and Brenda's greed, they had made mistakes. Amateur, sloppy mistakes. I opened a PDF of a loan application for the new Orion property. It required a guarantor. It required my signature. And there it was. My signature. But it wasn't real. It was a clumsy digital copy-paste of my signature from a different document. I could see the pixelation where they hadn't smoothed out the background. They had forged my signature on federal loan documents. I sat back in the creaky motel chair. This wasn't just civil fraud. This was bank fraud. This was a federal crime with prison time. And the loan documents were signed by Greg Sterling, CEO, and Brenda Miller, CFO of Orion Investments. I had them. I had them dead to rights. But I couldn't strike yet. If I went to the police now, Greg would claim it was a clerical error. He'd pay a fine and bury me in litigation for years. He had money for expensive lawyers. I had $10. I needed to let them hang themselves. I needed them to feel secure. I needed them to think I was defeated, broke, and hiding in a hole somewhere. I closed the laptop. I had the blueprints for their destruction. Now I just needed to build the trap. The digital evidence of Project B burned in my mind. I spent the next 6 hours in a forensic accounting trance. The ghost access gave me entry to everything, but I had to be careful. If I made any changes, if I altered any files, the system logs might alert the IT director, a man named Steven who used to be loyal to me but now undoubtedly answered to Greg. So I became a ghost. I copied, downloaded, screenshotted, and traced the flow of money. It was worse than I thought. Sterling Realty was being bled dry to fund their lifestyle and the transfers to Brenda's shell company. Greg had stopped paying vendors. We were 3 months behind on payments to the construction crews for the new skyscraper in the financial district. We were in default on the interest for 2 major loans. Greg was robbing Peter to pay Brenda. The company, my life's work, was a house of cards. If the creditors found out, we'd be insolvent in 30 days. Suddenly, a red warning box popped up on my screen. System alert. Unidentified user detected. Tracing IP address. My heart stopped. Steven was running a security sweep. He must have noticed the massive data download. If he traced the IP address, he'd see it was coming from a cheap motel off I-95. He'd know it was me. He'd shut down the ghost access, and I'd lose my only window into their crimes. Trace progress, 20%. I couldn't just log off. The download of the Orion deed transfers was only halfway done. If I cut the connection now, the files would be corrupted, and I might never get back in. Trace progress, 40%. Think, Valerie. Think. You built this system. I opened the command prompt. My fingers flew across the keys. I didn't try to block the trace. That would trigger an alarm. Instead, I needed to mask my location. I needed to spoof the internal network. Trace progress, 60%. I typed in the code to reroute my signal through the office's own internal VPN. I assigned my session ID to a static IP address within the building. Specifically, the IP address of the large format printer in the architectural design room on the 40th floor. Trace progress, 80%. Come on, I whispered, sweat beading on my forehead. Come on. Trace progress, 99%. I hit enter. The red box disappeared. A new message appeared. User identified. Device HP DesignJet, Z9. Location, room 404. I exhaled, my breath shaking. To Steven, it would look like the printer was just running a large diagnostic update or downloading a massive blueprint file. A glitch. Nothing to worry about. The download bar on the Orion files hit 100%. Download complete. I disconnected immediately. I sat there in the silence of the motel room, my heart pounding like a drum. That was too close. I checked the files I had saved. They were all there. The forged signatures. The bank fraud. The embezzlement. But then I found something else. A subfolder in Greg's email archive labeled legal/personal. I opened it. It contained emails between Greg and a private investigator named Valentine. The dates went back 2 years. Subject: surveillance target. From Greg to Valentine, I need dirt. Anything. Infidelity, substance abuse, mental instability. I need grounds to void the prenup. Dig deeper. Or make something up. I can't afford to give her half. From Valentine to Greg, Mr. Sterling, we've tailed her for 6 months. She goes to work. She goes to the grocery store. She goes to her mother's. She works late. There's no dirt. The woman's a saint. My breath hitched. 2 years. He had been planning to get rid of me for 2 years, but couldn't find a way to do it without losing money. And then, a more recent email. Dated 1 week ago. From Greg to Lorraine. Subject: the plan. Lorraine, forget the dirt. We're going with the mental breakdown angle. Your testimony is key. We'll claim she's overworked, paranoid, unfit to lead. We'll force a no-confidence vote at the board. Once she's out, we trigger the buyout clause at the lowest valuation. From Lorraine to Greg, I can testify she has been erratic lately. Very emotional. I'm worried about her, Greg. But about the condo fees, are we sure the company will cover the renovation costs if I do this? From Greg to Lorraine, don't worry, Lorraine. Just cut the check. As long as you keep Valerie in the dark, the condo is yours. The old woman is greedy, but she's useful. I stared at the screen, tears of rage blurring my vision. My mother. My own mother. She wasn't just supporting happiness. She was conspiring to have me declared mentally unstable so her golden child could steal my husband, and so she could get a free renovation on her condo. The old woman is greedy. That's what Greg called her. And she had sold out her eldest daughter for a marble countertop. It was Shakespearean. It was grotesque. I'll show you erratic, I seethed. I had the fraud evidence, which was good. But to destroy them completely, I needed to dismantle their alliances. I needed to isolate them. I looked at the clock. It was 2 p.m. I had been working nonstop for 12 hours. I was hungry, unwashed, and running on pure adrenaline. I needed a burner phone. I couldn't use my cell. They were probably tracking it or pulling the records. I went to a convenience store across the street, buying a cheap prepaid phone with cash. Back in the room, I sat on the bed and stared at the new phone. Who could I call? My friends? Most were couple friends shared with Greg. They'd likely side with charming Greg or stay neutral. My family? Obviously not. My employees? Too risky. I needed someone powerful. Someone who hated Greg. Someone with the resources to wage a war. A name popped into my head. Harlan Vance. Before I reached out to Harlan Vance, there was one more wound I had to cauterize. One file I had been avoiding in the Sterling Realty database. Tyler. My son was my weak spot, my Achilles heel. I had shielded him from Greg's narcissism his entire life. When Greg forgot Tyler's birthday, I bought the gift and signed "Love, Dad." When Greg missed Tyler's soccer games, I told Tyler that Dad was working hard for our future. I had raised him to believe his father was a hero, covering up the reality that his father was a negligent egomaniac. I realized now that had been my greatest mistake. I had protected Tyler from the truth, and in doing so, I had allowed Greg to buy his loyalty with lies. I opened the folder labeled Internship/Payroll, Tyler Sterling. Greg had put Tyler on the payroll 3 years ago as an intern. Tyler never came to the office. He never filed a report. But he collected a salary of $60,000 a year, plus expenses. I pulled up the credit card statement for the company card issued to Tyler. The one I usually just paid without looking at the details because I trusted him. Liquor Depot, $400 Marquee Nightclub, $1,200 bail bonds, Miami, $500 online gambling site, $2,500. My son was in a tailspin. He wasn't studying. He was partying. And instead of parenting him, Greg was funding it to buy an ally. Then I saw the email attachment in the folder. It was a document regarding Tyler's trust fund. Greg had recently amended the terms. Originally, the fund was to be paid out at age 25, conditional on college graduation. The new terms, dated 2 weeks ago, immediate access to a $200,000 cash provision, transfer of title for the 2024 Porsche 911, and the attached correspondence from Tyler to Greg. Dad, Mom's going to flip if I drop out next semester. From Greg to Tyler, Mom's not going to be in charge much longer. Ty. She treats you like a kid. I treat you like a man. You want the car? You want the cash? You just have to back me up when the time comes. You have to tell the lawyers Mom's been acting strange. That she's unstable. From Tyler to Greg. Okay. I'm in. VP, seriously? I read the words, and my heart didn't just break. It atomized. Vice President. Tyler was failing intro to economics. He spent his weekends playing video games and sleeping until noon. He wasn't qualified to run a lemonade stand, let alone a department in a multi-million-dollar company. Greg was setting him up to fail, stroking his ego to use him as a pawn against me. And Tyler, my sweet boy, he had sold his mother out for a Porsche and a title he hadn't earned. I remembered the text he sent me last night. Dad says he'll cut off my tuition. He wasn't worried about tuition. He was worried about the easy money. I picked up my burner phone. My thumb hovered over the keypad. I wanted to call him. I wanted to scream at him. I wanted to beg him to see reason. But the boy who stood in that living room and told me to accept reality wasn't the boy I raised. He was his father's creation. If I continued to cushion his fall, I would lose him forever to Greg's world of corruption and shallowness. The only way to save him, to truly save him, was to let him crash. I navigated to the payroll system. I accessed the employee database. Employee, Tyler Sterling. Status, active. Action, terminate. I clicked confirm. Then I went to the health insurance portal. Tyler was on my policy, the policy I personally paid for, separate from the company plan to ensure he had the best coverage. Remove dependent, Tyler Sterling. Reason, no longer a full-time student. It was petty. It was small. But it was the first time in 22 years I wasn't fixing something for him. I typed a text message on the burner phone. I didn't send it yet, just wrote it, staring at the cursor. Tyler, I saw the emails. I saw the car. You chose the easy way. But the easy way is a trap. When your father is done using you, he will discard you just like he did me. I love you enough to let you learn this the hard way. Good luck, Mr. Vice President. I deleted the draft. He wouldn't listen to words. He would only listen to consequences. I closed the laptop on Tyler's file. It felt like amputation. Cutting off a limb to save the body. Now it was time for the offensive. I picked up the burner phone again. I dialed the number for Vance Enterprises. I knew it by heart. I'd looked at it enough times when we were rivals. Vance Enterprises, chairman's office. A crisp voice answered. I need to speak with Harlan Vance immediately. Mr. Vance is in meetings. May I ask what this is regarding? Tell him it's Valerie Sterling. Tell him I know how Greg got the rezoning for the Hudson Yards plot. And tell him I have the emails. There was a pause. A long, heavy silence. 1 moment, please. 30 seconds later, a deep, gravelly voice came on the line. Mrs. Sterling. To what do I owe the pleasure? Did your husband send you over to gloat? My husband just fired me, emptied my bank accounts, and moved his mistress, my sister, into my house, I said, my voice steady. I'm not here to gloat, Mr. Vance. I'm here to burn him to the ground. And I thought perhaps you'd like to bring the marshmallows. Silence, Harlan Vance said on the other end of the line. Then a low chuckle that sounded like rocks tumbling in a dryer. I'm listening. Not on the phone, I said. I need a meeting. Tonight. The Union League Club. Library room. 1 hour. Come alone. I'll be there. I hung up and looked at myself in the motel mirror. My suit was rumpled. My hair was a mess. I looked like a woman who had slept in her clothes, which I was. But my eyes looked different. The fear was gone. In its place was something colder, sharper. I splashed cold water on my face, put on a layer of lipstick, my armor, and walked out to my car. I drove into the city, the adrenaline keeping my exhaustion at bay. I walked into the Union League Club in the same rumpled suit I'd fled my house in, carrying a laptop bag that contained enough evidence to send my husband to Rikers Island. The doorman eyed me skeptically, but when I mentioned Harlan Vance, he ushered me through immediately. This place smelled of old money, cigars, and mahogany, a world Harlan Vance ruled. I found him in the library room, sitting in a leather wingback chair, reading the Financial Times. He was 65, with silver hair and eyes like polished flint. He didn't stand as I approached. "Mrs. Sterling," he said, folding his paper. "You look terrible." "I feel terrible," I admitted, sinking into the chair opposite him. "But my brain is working perfectly." "You mentioned the Hudson Yards deal," Harlan said, getting straight to the point. "You said you had proof." I opened my laptop. I wasted no time on pleasantries. I pulled up the dossier I had compiled in the motel room. I turned the screen toward him. 3 years ago, Greg outbid you for the Hudson Yards plot. You suspected he bribed the city councilman, Franklin Miller. You were right. Harlan leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. "Here is the wire transfer," I said, pointing at the screen. $50,000 to a shell company called Miller Management. And here are the emails between Greg and Miller discussing the expedited rezoning fee. Greg was sloppy. He used his personal email for the initial contact. Harlan scanned the documents. His expression didn't change, but the air around him seemed to grow colder. "Why are you showing me this now? You were the COO. You profited from this deal." "I didn't know," I said, my voice firm. "Greg kept a second set of books. I found them last night after he threw me out of my house, froze my accounts, and moved my sister into my bed." Harlan looked up, a flicker of surprise crossing his face. "His sister-in-law?" "And my mother is cheering them on," I added, a bitter laugh escaping my lips. "It's a regular family reunion, and I'm the only one not invited." I took a breath. "Mr. Vance, I didn't come here to gossip. I came here to make a deal. Greg is trying to destroy me. He's forged my signature on fraudulent loans. He's embezzling from the company. He's going to leave Sterling Realty a smoking crater." "And you want me to save you?" Harlan asked, raising an eyebrow. "No. I want you to help me bury him. And in return, I will give you the Hudson Yards property." Harlan paused. "Go on. Greg is overleveraged. He's cash poor. He's about to default on the construction loans. If you step in now as a white knight, investor offering a bridge loan to save the project, he'll take it. He's desperate. And in the loan agreement, we include a collateral clause. If he defaults, which he will, because I know the real numbers, you take the assets. Specifically, the Hudson Yards deed." Harlan stared at me for a long moment. The silence stretched thick and tense. Then, a slow smile spread across his face. It wasn't a warm smile. It was the smile of a predator recognizing another predator. "You're a vindictive woman, aren't you?" Harlan said softly. "I'm efficient," I corrected. "Greg thinks I'm a scorned wife who's going to cry in a corner. He doesn't realize I'm the one who wrote his business plan." Harlan closed my laptop and pushed it back toward me. "I like you, Valerie. You have nerve. I always found Greg to be a peacock. All feathers, no flight. But you're a hawk." He pulled out his phone. "I'm calling my personal counsel. He's the best litigator in New York. He'll represent you in the divorce pro bono. Consider it an investment in our new partnership." "Thank you," I whispered, relief flooding through me. "And Valerie," Harlan added, his eyes hard. "Don't disappoint me. If we do this, we destroy him utterly. No mercy. No taking him back when he cries." "He won't be crying," I said, thinking of Greg's smirk as he took my ring. "He'll be screaming." Harlan nodded. Good. Now, let's get you a hotel room that doesn't charge by the hour. You can't plan a war if you haven't slept. That night, I slept in a suite at the Plaza Hotel, paid for by Vance Enterprises. I took a long bath, scrubbing the grime of the motel from my skin. As I lay between the clean, crisp sheets, I felt a profound shift inside me. For 20 years, I had been the fixer. I had smoothed over Greg's mistakes, cleaned up his messes, made him look good. I had been the invisible glue holding it all together. Now, I was going to be the solvent. I was going to dissolve everything he thought he owned. My phone buzzed. It was an email alert from my bank. Or rather, Greg's bank. New login detected. I smiled in the dark. The war had begun. And tomorrow, I had a divorce settlement to sign. I knew exactly what I was going to do. I was going to give Greg exactly what he wanted, a victory so easy, he wouldn't check the fine print for the poison. 3 days later, the trap was set. Harlan's lawyer, a terrifyingly calm man named David Quaid, had drafted the divorce settlement. It was a masterpiece of legal misdirection. On the surface, it looked like a complete surrender. The proposal was simple. Greg gets the family home. Greg gets full ownership of Sterling Realty. Valerie receives a one-time lump sum of $500,000, a fraction of what I was owed, barely enough to buy a studio apartment in Queens. Valerie relinquishes all claims to future alimony. It looked like I was giving up. It looked like I was broken, desperate for cash, and just wanted to run away. Greg would love it. It fed his ego perfectly. It confirmed his narrative that I was weak and erratic. But buried deep in the 60-page document, in Section 14, subsection C, paragraph 4, was the poison pill clause. In the event that either party to this agreement is found to have engaged in undisclosed criminal activity, fraud, or embezzlement during the course of the marriage, or is convicted of a felony involving financial crimes within 24 months of signing, this agreement in its entirety shall become null and void. In such an event, all assets, including 100% of company shares and real estate holdings, shall revert to the non-offending party as punitive damages. Greg never read the fine print. He paid lawyers to do that. But his lawyer, Richard Valentine, the same sleazy investigator he'd been emailing, was lazy. I knew this because I used to pay his invoices. Valentine would skim contracts looking for the big numbers, the settlement amount, the alimony caps. He wouldn't be looking for a specific reversion clause buried in boilerplate liability language. I met Greg and Valentine at Valentine's office in Midtown. I wore no makeup, just an old, oversized sweater and slacks that hung loosely on my frame. I wanted to look smaller. I kept my head down, staring at the floor, clutching a tissue. I needed to sell the picture of the defeated woman. Greg strode in like he owned the world. He was wearing a new Italian suit, Zegna, custom fit, and smelled of expensive cologne, probably a gift from Brenda, using my money. He didn't even look at me as he sat down. He checked his watch, then his phone. Well, look what the cat dragged in, Greg sneered, crossing his legs. I hope you're ready to sign, Valerie. Brenda and I have wedding invitations to order. We're on a tight schedule. Just give me the check, I said, my voice quavering. I forced a tear to run down my cheek. I just want to be gone, Greg. I can't. I can't fight you anymore. You win. Greg laughed, a sharp bark of sound. He looked at Valentine. See? Told you she'd fold. She doesn't have the stomach for a real fight. She's soft. Valentine slid the papers across the mahogany table. Standard agreement, Valerie. You walk away with $500,000 and a clean slate. Just sign here, here, and here. Initial the bottom of each page. I picked up the pen. My hand was shaking. Part acting, part pure adrenaline. I was signing away my life's work on the gamble that Greg was a criminal. But I knew he was. I had the files. And Tyler. I asked softly, hesitating over the signature line. Tyler's staying with me, Greg said, leaning back in his chair, texting someone under the table. Probably Brenda. He's my VP now. We're going to build an empire together without your constant nagging about ethics and regulations. The boy needs a father, not a smother. I felt a sharp pain in my chest, a physical ache for my son, but I swallowed it. Okay. Just take care of him, Greg. Don't let him ruin his life. Sign the damn papers, Valerie, Greg snapped. I have a lunch reservation at Le Bernardin. I put my name on the line. Valerie Sterling. With that ink, I seemingly signed away 25 years of blood, sweat, and tears. Then Greg took the pen. He didn't even flip the pages. He didn't ask Valentine if there were any concerns. He just wanted it done. He wanted the obstacle removed so he could marry my sister and legitimize his theft. He signed with a flourish. A big, arrogant loop on the G. Done, Valentine said, closing the folder. The check will be wired to your new account tomorrow. Greg stood up, buttoning his jacket. He looked down at me with a smirk that made my skin crawl. He looked at me like I was something he had scraped off his shoe. You know, Valerie, you should thank me, he said. You were always too uptight for this life. The stress was killing you. Go live on a farm or something. Find yourself a nice librarian. Leave the business to the sharks. Goodbye, Greg, I whispered, not looking up. As he walked toward the elevator, I could hear him laughing with Valentine. That was easier than I thought. She didn't even ask for the beach house. Pathetic. The elevator doors closed, cutting off his laughter. I leaned against the metal wall of the conference room and let out a long, shuddering breath. He had signed. The poison pill was active. Now, all I had to do was prove the crime, and I already had the proof. I just needed the right stage to present it. And what better stage than a wedding? Greg and Brenda had announced the date. It was in 3 weeks. A whirlwind romance, they called it. They wanted to be married before the spring gala season so they could debut as New York's new power couple. 3 weeks. That was my deadline. I left the building and got into Harlan's waiting town car. He signed. Harlan asked from the back seat, his face shadowed. He signed, I said, a genuine smile finally breaking through the mask of misery. He thinks he bought my silence for $500,000. He just signed away his entire life. Harlan poured me a glass of sparkling water. To the architect, he said. To the demolition. To the demolition, I replied, clinking my glass against his. The next 3 weeks were an exercise in masochism. I had to remain invisible while Greg and Brenda flaunted their victory all over New York. I rented a small, discreet apartment on the Upper West Side using my maiden name, a place Greg wouldn't think to look. I spent my days with Harlan's forensic accountants, building the case. We were turning the raw data I'd stolen into a legal sledgehammer. We traced every dollar, every forged signature, every fake invoice. It was meticulous work, but it kept my mind off the pain. But I couldn't avoid them entirely. New York is a big city, but the circle of high-end retail is small. 10 days before the wedding, I was walking past Saks Fifth Avenue. I wasn't shopping. I was meeting one of Harlan's contacts at a nearby cafe. But as I passed the display window, the automatic door slid open and a familiar, shrill laugh spilled out onto the sidewalk. It was Brenda. She was walking out of the store, followed by a personal shopper laden with bags. Chanel, Dior, Louboutin. She looked expensive. She had a new haircut, a sleek bob that mimicked the style I used to wear, and she was draped in a white cashmere coat that probably cost more than my car. I tried to turn away, to blend into the crowd, but she saw me. Her eyes widened, and then narrowed into a cat-like slit. Valerie, she called out, her voice echoing on the busy street. Oh my God. She strutted over to me, her heels clicking on the pavement. She looked me up and down, taking in my plain wool coat and sensible shoes. Wow, she said, feigning pity. You look rested. I mean, tired, but rested. How is the unemployment life treating you? I'm fine, Brenda, I said, trying to step around her. I have to go. Don't be rude, she said, grabbing my arm. Her grip was surprisingly strong. We're family, remember? Mom is so worried about you. She says you won't answer her calls. I have nothing to say to her, I said coldly. Or to you. Brenda laughed, tossing her hair. Still so bitter. You know, you should be happy for us. Greg is finally living his best life. We're so in sync. We just bought a villa in St. Bart's for the honeymoon. Did he ever take you to St. Bart's? Oh, wait, no. You were always too busy saving the company to take a vacation. She pulled a black credit card out of her purse, the Centurion card. The invitation-only American Express black card issued to Sterling Realty corporate officers. Look at this, she said, waving it in my face. Unlimited limit. Greg gave it to me yesterday. He said, baby, buy whatever you want. We earned it. It feels so good not to have to beg you for rent money anymore, Valerie. I stared at the card. We earned it. I repeated. You mean I earned it? You built it, we enjoy it, Brenda smirked, leaning in close. She lowered her voice to a conspiratorial whisper. Let's be honest, Val. You were never fun. You were always the boring big sister. Greg needs a muse. He needs excitement. And let's face it, you're getting old. Men want freshness. The urge to slap her was so strong my hand twitched. I wanted to scream that she was spending stolen money. I wanted to tell her that the unlimited limit was backed by fraudulent loans that would land her in federal prison. But I couldn't. Not yet. The trap wasn't sprung. I forced my muscles to relax. I slumped my shoulders, playing the part of the defeated ex-wife one last time. You won, Brenda, I said softly, looking at the ground. You got the guy. You got the money. Just leave me alone. Brenda beamed. She took my surrender as a compliment. Don't cry, she said, patting my cheek with a patronizing tap. Maybe you can come to the wedding? Mom would love it. We could put you at the singles table near the back. There's a nice widower coming, he's 70, but he has a condo in Florida. I think I'll pass, I said. Suit yourself, she shrugged. She signaled to her personal shopper. Come on, Jean-Luc. We still need to find shoes for the rehearsal dinner. She turned and strutted away, swinging her hips, unaware that she was walking straight into an abyss. She was holding a credit card that was essentially a tracking device for the FBI. Every swipe was another nail in her coffin. Enjoy the shopping spree, Brenda, I whispered as she disappeared into a waiting limousine. Because where you're going, the only accessory you'll be wearing is handcuffs. I walked to my meeting with a renewed sense of purpose. Seeing her arrogance, her total lack of remorse, washed away the last lingering dregs of guilt I had about destroying my family. They weren't family. They were vultures picking at a carcass. But this carcass was about to wake up and bite back. The day before the wedding, I did something dangerous. I went to see Tyler. Harlan advised against it. He's made his choice, Valerie, he said. Don't give them a warning. But I was a mother first and a vengeful ex-wife second. I had carried Tyler in my body. I had nursed him through fevers and heartbreaks. I needed to give him one last chance to get off the sinking ship before I torpedoed it. I waited outside his new penthouse apartment, the one Greg had bought with company funds, located in Soho. At 11 a.m., Tyler stumbled out, looking hungover. He wore designer sunglasses and a sweatshirt that cost more than my first car. He was walking toward the new Porsche 911 parked at the curb, the bribe Greg had given him. Tyler, I called out from where I stood near a lamppost. He jumped, spinning around. When he saw me, his face hardened. He took a step back, as if I were contagious. Mom? What are you doing here? He asked, his voice defensive. Are you stalking me now? I'm not stalking you. I'm trying to save you. I don't need saving, he spat, unlocking the car. I'm doing great. Dad just put me in charge of the Southern portfolio. I have a team under me. I'm making moves, Mom. Tyler, listen to me, I said, stepping in his path. I kept my voice low, urgent. Your father is lying to you. There is no Southern portfolio. The company is bankrupt. He's stealing money to pay for this lifestyle. He's using you as a shield. When the feds come, and they are coming, your name is on the documents. You're the one signing the expense reports. Tyler laughed. It was a hollow, brittle sound. God, you just can't stand it, can you? You can't stand that we're successful without you. You're just jealous. Jealous. I looked at him, incredulous. I built that company, Tyler. I know the numbers. Greg is transferring debt to your name. He's setting you up as the fall guy. You're lying. Tyler shouted, causing a passerby to look over. Dad told me you'd do this. He said you'd try to poison me against him because you're lonely and bitter. You're living in some dump, right? Dad said you're living in a studio apartment. I'm living in reality, I said, grabbing his arm. Tyler, please. Don't go to the wedding tomorrow. Just say you're sick. Go away with your friends. Just don't be there standing next to him when it happens. When what happens, he challenged, yanking his arm away. You're going to crash it, aren't you? You're going to make a scene. He looked at me with such disdain, such utter lack of respect, that it took my breath away. You're pathetic, Mom. You're the past. Nobody wants you there. I raised you, I said, my voice trembling. I know you. You are not this person. You are kind. You are smart. You are not a thief. I'm not a thief, he screamed, his face reddening. I'm a businessman. Like Dad. And Dad is a winner. You're just a loser who got replaced. The words hung in the air between us. A loser who got replaced. I looked at my son. Really looked at him. I saw the fear behind the sunglasses. He knew deep down that he wasn't qualified for the job. He knew he was playing pretend. But the allure of the money, the car, the easy respect was too strong. He was addicted to the fantasy Greg had sold him. And he would defend that fantasy with his life. Okay, I said softly. The fight went out of me. The mother who wanted to protect her cub retreated, and the architect stepped forward. Okay, Tyler. I tried. Yeah, well, try harder to stay away from us, he sneered. I'm calling security if you don't leave. He got in the Porsche, revving the engine aggressively, a sound meant to intimidate. As he peeled out of the parking spot, he rolled down the window and yelled, "Don't come tomorrow, Mom. You're dead to us." I watched him drive away, weaving dangerously into traffic. My heart broke all over again, but this time, the brake was cleaner. It was a surgical brake. I had held out my hand. He had slapped it away. He had chosen his side. I pulled out my phone and called Harlan. How did it go? He asked. He's gone, I said flatly. Completely brainwashed. He thinks I'm the enemy. Then he will learn the hard way, Harlan said, his voice grim but supportive. Are you ready for tomorrow? Yes, I said, watching the dust settle where my son's car had been. I'm ready. Let's burn it down. I have the tuxedo ready, Harlan said. And the police are briefed. Inspector Miller is meeting us in the lobby at 8 p.m. Perfect, I said. I'll see you then. I turned and walked away. I didn't look back at the empty parking spot. I didn't cry. I had shed my last tear for Tyler Sterling. Tomorrow, he wasn't my son. He was a co-conspirator. And he was going to learn a lesson that no university could teach him. The morning of the wedding dawned gray and overcast. A perfect day in New York for a funeral. I spent the morning in the suite at the Plaza Hotel. Harlan had secured a room 3 floors above the grand ballroom where the wedding was taking place. I reviewed the presentation one last time. We had it timed to the second. It would start just after the love story video montage Brenda had commissioned for $20,000. At 6 p.m., the guests began to arrive. I watched the live feed from a camera Harlan had installed in the ballroom. Being the owner of the building had its perks. Getting access to the security feed was trivial. It was nauseating. The room was draped in crystal and pink roses, thousands of them. There was an ice sculpture of Greg and Brenda intertwined. I saw my mother, Lorraine, greeting guests. She wore a champagne-colored dress that was too young for her, beaming as if she'd won the lottery. Yes, isn't it wonderful? I heard her say to a confused-looking cousin through the audio feed. They're soulmates. Eleanor? Oh, poor Valerie just couldn't handle Greg's success. She's taking some time away. Mental health break, you know. She tapped her temple significantly. My mother was telling New York society that I was crazy. I saw Greg. He looked nervous but triumphant. He was shaking hands, slapping backs, playing the part of the benevolent king. And Brenda, she entered in a custom Vera Wang gown draped in diamonds. Diamonds my company paid for. She looked stunning. I had to admit it. Stunning and rotten. The ceremony began. I listened to them exchange vows. I promise to be your partner in all things, Greg said, looking deeply into Brenda's eyes. I promise to support your dreams and spend my life making you happy, Brenda cooed. Lies, I whispered to the empty suite, sipping a black coffee. Every word is a lie. Are we ready? Harlan asked, entering the room. He looked dashing in a tuxedo, his silver hair combed back. The signal is live, the tech guy confirmed from the corner. The second you give the word, we hijack the feed. Not yet, I said. Wait for the toasts. Wait until everyone is seated and watching the screens. Harlan handed me a garment bag. Then you'll need this. I unzipped the bag. Inside was the suit. Not a frantic, desperate ex-wife's dress. It was a sleek, tailored black tuxedo by Yves Saint Laurent. Satin lapels, razor-sharp tailoring, powerful, elegant, severe. Put on your armor, Valerie, Harlan said. Tonight, you are not the victim. You are the executioner. I touched the fabric. It was cool and smooth. I went into the bathroom and changed. When I came out, I looked in the mirror. The woman looking back at me wasn't the tired, frantic woman who had been kicked out of her home 3 weeks ago. She was formidable. She looked dangerous. I put on my heels, black stilettos that clicked like gunshots on the marble floor. I pulled my hair back into a tight chignon. No jewelry. Just red lipstick. Showtime, I said. We took the service elevator down. I watched the numbers descend. 10, 9, 8. My heart wasn't racing anymore. It was beating slow and heavy, like a war drum. The elevator doors opened on the lobby level. Inspector Miller and 2 uniformed officers were waiting in the shadows of the corridor leading to the ballroom. Mrs. Sterling, the inspector said, nodding. We have the warrant. We're ready when you are. Give me 5 minutes, I said. I want them to see it before you put the cuffs on. Understood, Miller said. We'll wait for your signal. I walked toward the ballroom doors. The music from inside was swelling, a romantic ballad. The security guards Greg had hired specifically to keep me out stepped forward, their faces grim. Ma'am, this is a private event. Invitation only. Harlan Vance stepped out from behind me. I own the building, he said, his voice low and terrifying. Stand aside, or you'll be looking for work tomorrow. The guards hesitated. They recognized Harlan immediately. His face was on the cover of Forbes often enough. They looked at each other, then stepped back, opening the double doors for us. I didn't sneak in. I pushed the doors open wide. Inside, the music had just reached a crescendo. The video on the massive screens showed Greg and Brenda kissing in front of the Eiffel Tower. The crowd was applauding. I stood there, a solitary figure in black against the sea of pink flowers and white linens. I held a small remote control in my hand. The silence that rippled through the room started at the back and moved forward like a wave. Heads turned. Whispers started. Greg was at the head table, raising a glass of champagne. He saw the movement in the crowd. He squinted against the spotlight. Then he saw me. The glass slipped from his hand. It shattered on the floor, the sound cutting through the music. Valerie, he mouthed. I smiled. It was the coldest smile I had ever worn. I lifted the remote. Cut the feed. Greg yelled, jumping up from the head table. Security. Get her out of here. But the security guards were staying put, their eyes fixed on Harlan Vance, who stood stoically beside me. I pressed the button on the remote. The romantic image of the Eiffel Tower on the massive 20-foot screens flickered and died. The sentimental music cut out with a screech of feedback that made the guests cover their ears. In its place, a stark, high-contrast spreadsheet appeared. Red numbers against a white background. Credit card statement. Corporate account 8842 user. Brenda Miller. Unauthorized. Purchase. Diamond ring. Cartier. $25,000 purchase. Wedding venue deposit. The Plaza. $150,000 source of funds. Sterling Realty construction loan. Hudson Yards project. A collective gasp went through the room. 300 people, investors, politicians, friends, stared at the screen. What is that? Brenda hissed, clutching her napkin. Greg, fix it. Turn it off. Greg screamed at the AV booth. I said turn it off. But the technician in the booth was Harlan's guy. He didn't turn it off. He turned up the volume. And then my pre-recorded voice boomed through the speakers, narrating the evidence. Hello, Greg. Hello, Brenda. You wanted a family affair? You wanted everyone to witness your union? Well, let's show them what this union is really built on. I walked down the center aisle, my heels clicking rhythmically. The guests parted like the Red Sea, staring at me in shock. I felt their eyes, some horrified, some amused, some terrified. This is fake. Brenda shrieked, tears streaming down her perfectly made-up face. She stood up, knocking over her chair. She hacked the system. She's jealous. She's crazy. I clicked the remote again. A new document appeared. A PDF of a loan application. Is forgery crazy, Brenda? I asked, my voice projecting clearly without a mic. I stopped in the center of the dance floor, directly in front of the head table. Is bank fraud crazy? Because those are federal charges. Look at the signature. On the screen, a zoomed-in image of the signature appeared. Valerie Sterling. Next to it, a metadata analysis showing it had been copy-pasted. You forged my name to secure a $10 million loan, I said, looking straight at Greg. And then you funneled that money into a shell company called Orion Investments. Owner, Brenda Miller. I pointed at her. You're not just a mistress, Brenda. You're a money mule. Greg used you to launder $3 million. Did he tell you that? Did he tell you that when the IRS comes looking, they're coming for your signature? Brenda looked at Greg, her eyes wide with horror. Greg, you said it was tax optimization. You said it was legal. Shut up, Brenda. Greg hissed, sweat pouring down his face. Oh, don't stop him, I said, smiling coldly. Let him explain. Let him explain to our mother what he calls her. Click. The email appeared. Subject, the old woman. From Greg to Valentine, just cut Lorraine another check. The old woman is greedy. As long as we pay for her condo, she'll sell out her own daughter. She's useful, but God, she's annoying. Lorraine made a sound that was half wail, half choke. She stood up, her hands shaking so badly she dropped her purse. Greg, she gasped. You called me that? After everything I did for you? I betrayed my own daughter for you. And what did it get you, Mom? I asked, looking at her with pity. A seat at a wedding that's about to become a crime scene. Greg looked around the room, his eyes wild. He saw his empire crumbling in real time. He saw investors getting up to leave, pulling out their phones to call their lawyers. He saw the end. You signed the agreement, he yelled at me, desperate. You signed it. You gave up everything. You can't touch the company. Section 14, I said simply. The poison pill. You committed a felony, Greg. The agreement is void. And everything, the house, the company, the assets, reverts to me. Greg's knees gave out. He collapsed into his chair, looking small and defeated. And Tyler, I said, turning my gaze to my son, who sat at the end of the table, pale as a ghost. He was staring at the screens, trembling. Tyler, you wanted to be a businessman? I asked softly. Well, here's your first lesson. Always vet your partners. I clicked the remote one last time to cue the final video. But before I played it, I turned to look directly at the live stream camera Harlan had set up, the one broadcasting this to the world. Greg, you think you've won? Not yet. And to everyone watching, if you are still listening to this story, please hit the like button and comment with the number 1 below. Let me know you're with me. Your support tells me I'm not alone in this fight. Comment 1 now, because believe me, what I'm about to show you makes this betrayal look like just the warm-up. Now, listen to what a father really thinks of his son. I pressed play. The video was surveillance footage from the company parking garage, recorded 2 days ago. It showed Greg arguing with Brenda. The audio was crystal clear. Greg on video. Once we get the Vance money, we ditch the kid. Tyler is a liability. He's stupid, Brenda. He spends money like water, and he can't even read a balance sheet. We'll leave him with the tax debt on the shell company and move to Monaco. He's too dumb to figure it out. Brenda on video, but he's your son. Greg on video. He's a useful idiot. Once the wedding is over, I'm cutting him loose. The room was deathly quiet. Tyler stood up slowly. He stared at the screen, then at his father. The hero worship in his eyes was gone, replaced by a devastating, shattering understanding. "Dad," Tyler whispered. "You called me an idiot? You were going to abandon me?" "Tyler, listen," Greg stammered, holding out a hand. That was out of context. I was stressed. I didn't mean it." "You said I was a liability," Tyler said, his voice breaking. "Tyler, sit down," Greg ordered, his old arrogance trying to surface. "Don't listen to her." Tyler didn't sit down. He picked up a heavy crystal champagne bottle from the table. "I hate you," Tyler screamed. "I hate you." And he lunged at his father. Chaos erupted. Tyler swung the bottle, missing Greg's head by inches, but smashing into the centerpiece, sending glass and water flying everywhere. Greg scrambled back, tripping over Brenda's train. "Tyler, stop. You're crazy," Greg yelled, shielding his face. "You used me." Tyler sobbed, trying to grab Greg by the lapels. "I sold out Mom for you, and you were going to leave me?" Brenda was screaming, cowering under the table. Lorraine had fainted or was pretending to in her chair. The guests were scrambling for the exits, knocking over chairs in their haste to escape the scandal. I lowered the remote. The presentation was over. I nodded to Inspector Miller, who was standing by the doors. "Now," I said. The police swarmed the room. "Greg Sterling," Inspector Miller shouted, his voice booming over the commotion. "Police, you are under arrest for bank fraud, embezzlement, and forgery." Two officers pulled Tyler off Greg. Tyler collapsed on the floor, weeping, his tuxedo stained with wine and water. He didn't fight them. He just curled into a ball, broken. Greg tried to run. He actually tried to run toward the kitchen exit. But Harlan Vance stepped in his path. Harlan didn't touch him. He just stood there, a solid wall of judgment. Greg stopped, panting, looking like a trapped rat. An officer grabbed Greg's arms, wrenching them behind his back. The click of the handcuffs was the most satisfying sound I had ever heard. "Valerie," Greg shouted as they dragged him forward. "Valerie, tell them. Tell them it's a mistake. We can work this out. I'll give you half. I'll give you everything." I walked up to him. I stood so close I could smell the fear radiating off him. "You have nothing to give, Greg," I said, my voice as calm as a frozen lake. "It's already mine. Section 14, remember? You ruined everything," he spat, his mask slipping completely. "You bitter, vengeful *TCH. I didn't ruin anything," I said. "I just turned on the lights. And you? You're just a cockroach that got caught. Get him out of here," Inspector Miller ordered. Then they went for Brenda. "Brenda Miller," the officer said, pulling her out from under the table. "You are under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud and money laundering." "No," Brenda shrieked, kicking and flailing. "I didn't know. I'm just his fiancée. He made me do it. Mom, do something." She looked toward Lorraine, who was now sitting up, clutching her chest, watching her golden life disintegrate. Lorraine didn't move. She didn't speak. She looked at Brenda, then at the police, and closed her eyes, turning away. "Tell it to the judge," the officer said, cuffing Brenda. As they dragged Brenda past me, she locked eyes with me. Her mascara was running down her face in black streaks. "Valerie, please. I'm your sister. You stopped being my sister the day you slept with my husband," I said. I watched them go. The flashing lights of the police cars outside cast dancing shadows on the ballroom walls. The wedding cake, a 10-tier monstrosity, stood untouched in the corner. The flowers were perfect. The illusion was shattered. I looked at Tyler. He was sitting on the floor, surrounded by broken glass. An officer was talking to him, but he wasn't listening. He was looking at me. His eyes were red, swollen, and filled with shame. He didn't ask for help. He didn't call me Mom. He just looked down. I felt a pull in my chest, the instinct to run to him, to fix it. But I stayed where I was. Harlan placed a hand on my shoulder. "It's done," he said. "Yes," I whispered. "It's done." I turned to my mother. She was sitting alone at the table, staring at the empty chairs where Greg and Brenda had been. "Valerie," she croaked. I didn't answer. I turned my back on her. I took Harlan's arm. "Let's go," I said. "I believe I have a company to run." We walked out of the ballroom, leaving the wreckage of my family behind. I didn't look back. Not once. They had made their beds. Tonight, they had to lie in them. The days after the wedding were a media circus. The New York Post ran the story on the front page: "Bridal Doom, Real Estate Mogul Arrested at Altar. Ex-wife Takes All." I gave no interviews. I let the evidence speak for itself. I moved back into my house 3 days later. The police had cleared it as a crime scene. It was strange walking back into the rooms I had designed. Brenda's things were everywhere. Tacky clothes, cheap magazines, half-empty wine bottles. I hired a cleaning crew. "Throw it all out," I told them. "Anything that isn't mine. Burn the sheets. Replace the mattresses. I want this place sterilized." I wanted to scrub her DNA from my life. Greg was denied bail. The judge deemed him a flight risk because of the Monaco video. He was at Rikers Island, trading his Zegna suits for an orange jumpsuit. Brenda made bail, paid for by my mother, who had liquidated her retirement savings to get her baby out. But Brenda wasn't free. She was facing 5 to 10 years. Her face was all over the internet as the jail-bound gold digger. I walked into the offices of Sterling Realty, now solely mine. The employees greeted me with a mixture of fear and relief. They knew who had really been running the ship all along. "We're rebranding," I announced at the first all-hands meeting. "Sterling Realty is dead. Welcome to Phoenix Realty." They applauded. They knew who signed the paychecks now. A week later, my mother came to see me. I saw her on the security camera. She looked 10 years older. Her hair was unkempt, her coat buttoned wrong. She stood on my porch, shivering. I opened the door, but I didn't unlock the screen. "Valerie," she said, her voice trembling. "Lorraine," I said. I couldn't call her mom. "Can I come in? It's so cold. You can say what you have to say from there." She flinched. "Valerie, please be reasonable. Brenda is terrified. She's just a girl. She didn't know what she was doing. Greg manipulated her." "Brenda is 35 years old," I said coldly. "She knew she was sleeping with my husband. She knew she was spending my money. She signed the papers." "She's your sister," Lorraine wailed, clutching the mesh screen. "You can't let her go to prison. You have to drop the charges. Tell the DA it was a misunderstanding." "It wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a felony. If you do this," Lorraine seethed, her grief turning to familiar venom, "you are no daughter of mine. You are destroying this family." I laughed. It was a light, free sound. "Lorraine, you destroyed this family 20 years ago when you decided Brenda was the princess and I was the servant. You haven't come here to apologize. You've come here to ask me to fix it again. You want me to be the scapegoat one last time so Brenda can walk free. She's delicate. She's a criminal. And you're an accomplice," I said. "I saw the checks Greg wrote you. Consulting fees? You accepted money to help them manipulate me. You sold me out for a kitchen renovation." Lorraine went white. "I'm not pressing charges against you, Lorraine," I said. "Not because I love you, but because I don't want the shame of seeing my mother in a mugshot. But you're dead to me. Don't call me. Don't come here. If you need money, ask Brenda." "Oh, wait. She's broke." "Valerie, please. You chose your child," I said. "You chose Brenda. Now go take care of her." I closed the heavy oak door in her face. I engaged the deadbolt. Click. I watched on the monitor as she stood there, pounding on the door, screaming my name. Then, slowly, her shoulders slumped. She turned and walked away, a small, defeated figure in the gray afternoon. It hurt. Of course it hurt. But it was the pain of pulling out a splinter. Sharp, then relief. I walked into the living room, poured myself a glass of wine, and sat on the couch. The silence in the house wasn't lonely anymore. It was peaceful. Then there was Tyler. He hadn't called. Hadn't come by. I knew he was sleeping on a friend's couch because the authorities had seized the penthouse and the Porsche. The Southern portfolio job obviously didn't exist. I waited. I knew he had to come to me on his own terms. 2 weeks later, he showed up at my office building. He couldn't get past security, so the guard called up. Mrs. Sterling, Ms. Vance, your son is here. Send him up, I said. Tyler walked into my office. He looked terrible. He'd lost weight. He was wearing old jeans and a t-shirt. No designer sunglasses. No attitude. He looked like a boy again. Mom, he asked from the doorway. I looked up from my desk. Hello, Tyler. He came in and sat in the chair opposite me, the chair where investors used to sit. He stared at his hands. I'm sorry, he whispered. I didn't say anything. I let the silence stretch. He needed to say it all. I was stupid, he said, his voice cracking. He made me feel important. He told me I was better than college. He told me you were holding me back. And I wanted the car. I wanted to be rich like him. And you believed him because it was easier than working, I said, gentle but firm. Yeah, he admitted, tears dripping onto his jeans. I saw the video. He called me a liability. He was going to abandon me. I have nothing, Mom. They took the car. I have no money. My friends kicked me out. I need help. I looked at my son. I wanted to hug him. I wanted to write him a check and fix everything, just like I had done 1,000 times before. But I was the architect now. And you don't build a strong structure on a cracked foundation. If I saved him now, he would never learn. He would always be weak. I love you, Tyler, I said. He looked up, hope in his eyes. But I am not giving you any money. The hope vanished, replaced by terror. But where will I live? How will I eat? That's for you to figure out. Mom, please. Here's the deal, I said, sliding 2 pieces of paper across the polished mahogany desk. He looked at them. This is a student loan application, I said, pointing to the first one. If you want to go back to school, you pay for it. You take on the debt. You value the education. And this, he pointed to the second paper. This is a job application for the mail room at Phoenix Realty. Minimum wage. You start at the bottom. You sort mail. You fetch coffee. You learn the business from the ground up. The mail room, he asked, shocked. But I was a VP. You were a fake VP of a fraudulent department, I corrected. In the mail room, you'll be real. Take it or leave it. He stared at the papers. He looked at me. He saw the resolve in my eyes. He realized that the ATM was closed forever. If you want to be a man, Tyler, you earn it. Greg gave you things to buy you. I'm offering you nothing so you can build yourself. Slowly, shakily, he reached out and picked up the pen. Okay, he said, his voice quiet. I'll take the job. Good, I said. Report to Sarah in HR on the 4th floor. She'll get you an ID badge. Don't be late. If you're late 3 times, you're fired. No special treatment. He stood up. He looked at the job application, then at me. He really looked at me for the first time in years. You're scary, Mom, he said, a hint of awe in his voice. I know, I smiled. Now get to work. The trial was short. The evidence I provided was overwhelming. Greg Sterling pleaded guilty to avoid a 20-year sentence. He got 8 years in federal prison, plus full restitution. He looked gray and defeated in the courtroom. He didn't look at me once. Brenda took a plea deal. 3 years in prison for fraud. She sobbed when the gavel fell, looking at Lorraine in the gallery, screaming, Mom, do something. But Lorraine could do nothing. Lorraine was living in a studio apartment, subsisting on Social Security, having lost her allowance and her pride. I sat in the back row in my black suit. I watched justice be done. I didn't feel joy. I felt peace. The balance sheet was finally correct. Epilogue a year later. I stood in my office on the 40th floor, overlooking Park Avenue. The Phoenix Realty sign on the wall behind me was a sleek silver and blue. The company was thriving. We had just closed the Hudson Yards deal with Harlan Vance. He was putting in a mixed-use development, luxury condos, yes, but also affordable housing units and a community center. It was a project with a soul, something Greg never would have approved. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Tyler. Tyler, hey Mom. Just finished my econ final. Think I aced it. Also, the mailroom team improved sorting efficiency by 15% this week. Do I get a raise? Winky face. I smiled. Valerie, don't push it. But dinner's on me tonight. 7 p.m., don't be late. Tyler was working hard. He was tired, broke, and humbled. He lived in a shared apartment in Queens with 2 roommates. He took the subway. And I had never been prouder of him. He was becoming the man I knew he could be, not the caricature his father tried to mold. There was a knock on my door. "Come in." Harlan Vance walked in, holding a bottle of vintage champagne. "To the 1-year anniversary," he said. "Of what?" I asked. "Of the day you burned down the circus," he grinned. "It feels like a lifetime ago," I said, accepting a glass. "You know," Harlan said, leaning against my desk. "Greg sent me a letter from prison. Wants to know if I'll buy his shares in the old shell companies. He needs commissary money." "What did you tell him?" "I told him I only do business with the CEO," Harlan winked. "And the CEO is busy building an empire." We clinked glasses. I looked out at the city's skyline, the sun setting over the Hudson River, painting the sky in shades of gold and violet. I had lost a husband. I had lost a sister. I had lost a mother. But I had found myself. I was no longer the scapegoat, not the fixer, not the invisible wife. I was Valerie Sterling, the architect. And my life, at last, was truly my own. Thank you for listening to my story. It hasn't been easy to relive, but if my journey can help just one person stand up to the toxic people in their life, then it has been worth it. Family isn't always blood. Family is the people who respect you, who value you, and who stand by you when the storm hits. If you're holding on to someone just because they're family, but they're hurting you, let them go. You are strong enough to build something new. If you enjoyed this story and want to see more justice served, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow, and subscribe so you don't miss the next story. And tell me in the comments, have you ever had to cut off a toxic family member? How did you find the strength? I read every single comment, and I'd love to hear your story. Until next time, stay strong, stay smart, and never let anyone take the keys to your castle. As we step back from this turbulent saga, we are reminded that true strength often emerges from the deepest betrayals. This story serves as a powerful testament to the resilience of the human spirit, teaching us that our value is not defined by how much we sacrifice for others, but by the boundaries we set to protect our own dignity. It illustrates that sometimes the most painful endings are merely disguises for necessary new beginnings, pushing us to reclaim the power we once surrendered. Let this be a reminder that you always hold the pen to your own life script, regardless of the obstacles placed in your path. We hope this narrative has sparked a fire within you to stand tall in your own truth. If these lessons resonated with your heart, please share your thoughts below or simply comment "good" to let us know you appreciate this message.